What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Comics Clash. It's Isaiah. This weekend, Black Panther Wakanda Forever dropped in theaters, and it is the last project inside of Phase 4. So today I'm going to be ranking every single movie and TV show inside of Phase 4 from the worst to the best. So let's dive into it. But before we start this video, I just got to say that I'm not going to be including Werewolf by Night or I Am Groot because they're too short and they can't really be compared against these movies or TV shows. And now let's dive into the ranking. Alright, in last place is She-Hulk Attorney at Law. This show is just absolute garbage. This is the worst MCU project I have ever seen, and it is just really, really bad. The acting is horrible, the characters aren't likable. There are some moments that are good with Daredevil and Wong, but other than that, this show just crumbles on top of itself, and it's just not good. The finale was absolute garbage, and it completely ruined a mildly enjoyable show, and it just made it absolute dog crap. I didn't like She-Hulk Attorney at Law at all. There is a little bit of entertainment to be had here, and Daredevil was pretty good, but overall this show is just absolute garbage. Next up, we have Thor: Love and Thunder. Now, this movie is mildly entertaining. It's a fun time, but there's way too much comedy throughout the entire film, and a lot of it doesn't really land. It's too silly, and it can't really take itself seriously, which kind of ruins the movie in general. Christian Bale as Gore could have been an amazing MCU villain, but he wasn't in the movie as much as I wanted him to be, and he didn't really get enough screen time. Also, his turn from good to bad to good was way too quick, and they kind of rushed that whole storyline. I also didn't really like the ending of this film at all. I just felt that it was really weird that Thor is now going to be living with Gore's daughter. It just didn't really make sense to me. While there is some fun to be had, and Korg and Valkyrie are great inside this film, Jane Foster and Thor's relationship is pretty good. But overall, Thor: Love and Thunder is just not a great movie, and I was really excited for the film, and it just really, really disappointed me. Next up on the list, we have Miss Marvel. Now, this show isn't bad by any means, but it only peaked in its first episode, and that's a pretty bad thing. And then the rest of the show is just entirely mid. Kamala Khan is a likable character, and I love how she's interacting with her family and friends and trying to learn about her powers. But then the rest of the show just takes a weird turn, and it gets really boring, and there's just too much going on. The stuff in Pakistan didn't really make a lot of sense. I didn't get how it was like a time loop, and that was actually Kamala at the train station. It didn't make sense to me at all, and it's just really confusing. And then when they go back into episode 6, you don't really have a real villain, you don't really have a real story, and it was just not really a great finale. So overall, the show was alright, and Kamala Khan is a great character, and I'm excited to see her in the future, but it just wasn't really an interesting show, and it didn't really have me invested inside of what was going on. Yeah, there's some fun to be had. Kamala Khan's a great character, but it's just not that great. Coming in at number 12 is Black Widow. Now, this movie is a lot of fun, and there's some great action. Yelena and Red Guardian are great new introductions into the MCU, but overall, this film just crumbles in its third act. It's just way too melodramatic, and it just goes way over the top with its big action finale sequence, and then the villains are just totally wasted, and they're absolutely garbage. I hated what they did with Taskmaster. They had something that could have been amazing, and she could have been an awesome character, but they just kind of ruined her, and it just wasn't great what they did with her. And then they made Dreykov like the main villain, and he just wasn't that great or interesting at all. So it has a lot of fun. The family dynamics are amazing, and the interactions with Yelena and Black Widow, the banter that they have, it is so much fun, and there's some great comedy throughout the entire film. But it's a pretty generic MCU film, and then the finale just kind of ruins it. Next up on the list, we got Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Mid. Yes, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is really, really mid. There's not too much that's amazing, and there's not too much that's really bad. It's just kind of middle of the road. There wasn't enough multiverse in Multiverse of Madness, which really, really disappointed me. And I thought it was going to be some big film where they're traveling the multiverse, and there's a bunch of different characters, and it really develops Doctor Strange's character, but it didn't have that at all. Doctor Strange doesn't really get an arc in his own movie. The main arc is with Wanda, and it was really great. Wanda is definitely the standout in this movie. The acting with her is on point, and she is a great villain, but I don't think it was a good idea to introduce her as the villain in this movie. I think they should have built up to that a little further down the road, because it felt a little bit too soon for her to be the villain. But overall, the movie's fine. There's not too much to hate about it, but there's not too much to love about it either. Coming in at number 10 is Eternals. Now, I really liked Eternals. It's a fun time. The characters are great, and the visuals are amazing, but the story is really incohesive, and it keeps going back and forth from the past to the present, which makes it kind of confusing, and it's hard to follow the story at times. It takes you out of the movie a little bit when it keeps changing from past to present, and that's kind of annoying. The characters are amazing, and there's some great comedic moments throughout the entire film, but there's nothing really memorable about Eternals except for the visuals. So overall, Eternals is a pretty pretty fun time, and there's a lot of great things about the film, but it's just not really memorable, and the story is incohesive. Coming in at number 9 is Hawkeye, and Hawkeye is a pretty great show. I had so much fun watching it and tuning in every week to the new episode, but then thinking it over and seeing the finale, it just wasn't as good as some of the other shows on this list. Now, Hawkeye is a really interesting character, and I'm so glad that he got his own story. He is great in it, and Kate Bishop is an amazing introduction into the MCU. She's such a fun, likable character, and I would love to see her take the role of Hawkeye later on in the future. I think she is a really great character, and I just really enjoyed her throughout the entire show. But this show is not really memorable at all. I can barely remember the basic plot of the show, except for that there's like the tracksuit mafia, and then Kingpin shows up at the end, and there's some big fight. So yeah, it's not really memorable, and there's not too much to it, but it's a fun enough time. The Christmas vibes are amazing, and Yelena and Kate Bishop is some of the best comedy we've gotten in the MCU, and they are just such a great duo. I'd love to see more of them in the future. That was definitely one of the highlights of the show. But overall, Hawkeye is just not really a memorable show, and there's just not much to it. It's a fun Christmas time, and I might rewatch it later on in this holiday season. But overall, it's just not that memorable. Next up on the list, we have What If. Now, What If is a show that's a little bit inconsistent, which is why it's a bit lower on the list. But the highs of What If are really, really high. The zombie episode and then the Doctor Strange episode are just absolutely amazing. The Doctor Strange episode was just absolutely amazing, and it really thoroughly developed his character. Even though it's not really part of the MCU main timeline, it just really developed Doctor Strange's character, and I really, really love that episode. And then the zombie episode was just spectacular. It's so much fun seeing the Walking Dead inside of the MCU. It's just an amazing episode. But then the rest of the show is just a bit incohesive. There's some episodes that are good, there's some episodes that are mid, there's some episodes that are bad, right? So there's not too much to What If, since it's not really part of the main MCU timeline. I can't really put it much higher on the list. There's a lot of fun to be had with it. It's just a bit of an inconsistent show, which is why I can't really put it higher on this list. Next up on the list, we have WandaVision. Now, WandaVision was amazing. I have so much nostalgia for this show. Waking up every morning so early to watch the episodes, and I was just so invested in the show. The characters were amazing, and Wanda was amazing throughout the entire show. The intrigue with this show and then the build-up was just absolutely amazing, but then the finale was just absolute garbage, and it totally brought the show down. Like, if the finale was better, I think this would have been one of my top 3 of Phase 4, but it just didn't end up as what I wanted it to be. There's a lot of amazing build-up, and there's a lot of moments that really shine throughout WandaVision, but it's just kind of ruined by a finale that's way too over the top. It's just a generic action scene, that just some stupid jokes in there. They ruined Quicksilver. There's just a lot of stuff that was ruined throughout the finale. Overall, it's an amazing show with the build-up, but the finale just kind of puts it down a whole lot. Coming in at number 6 is Moon Knight. This show was pretty great. Oscar Isaac gives an amazing performance throughout the entire show, and he just totally elevates it. Episode 1 through 4 was a really cool, interesting show about this character, Steven, who's going through these different things, and I really enjoyed it a lot. There's just so much fun to be had there. And then episode 5, one of the greatest episodes in TV history, was so emotional, so much payoff, so much amazing acting. There's just so much to love about episode 5. It is my favorite episode of any MCU show. And then episode 6 is one of my least favorite episodes of any MCU show. So there's a lot of love and a lot of hate about Moon Knight, because episode 5 was just absolutely amazing. Learning about how Steven was abused as a kid, and how his mom blamed him for the death of his brother, and then how he made Mark to cope with that pain. That's just absolutely heartbreaking, and it was just insane watching that episode. It was a beautiful episode. It was an emotional episode. It was a fantastic episode. And then you get the episode 6, which just it ruined the show. It just turned into a big kaiju battle. They cut fight scenes. It just was really bad. It was way too rushed. And if Moon Knight was 9 episodes, I think it would have been definitely higher up on this list, but it just didn't turn out great with that finale. Episode 5 is absolutely amazing, and 1 through 4 is a fun, good show, but it crumbles in the finale, and that definitely brought it down a whole lot. Next up, in 5th place, we got Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, I get that people have criticisms about this show, but I thought it was an absolute blast. Bucky and Sam have such a great dynamic duo, and they're just so fun on screen together. Bucky's story throughout this show was absolutely amazing, and seeing him trying to, make amends with the people that he's hurt or their family members that he's killed or something, like, it was just really interesting seeing his story, and it was pretty emotional at times. And then Sam's journey throughout the show was even better. He was really interesting, and I love seeing his character, just seeing how he was a real person and he had financial troubles even though he was a superhero. And it was just really cool to see just a superhero in a normal life, and it was really just an interesting, fun show. John Walker was absolutely awesome in the show. His acting was amazing. Now, I know that some people didn't like his character, but I thought he was a really interesting character because he came in with good intentions and then he came out a villain. So it was really interesting seeing his journey, and then the blood on the shield and everything. It was just really, really fun to see him. And then Zemo was in it, and of course he's awesome as always. Now, the only issue with this show is definitely the villain. Carly Morgenthau is not interesting at all, and then her like comrades or whatever mission they're on, it's pretty forgettable. I don't really get what they were doing again. I think they're helping people after the blip or something, and then they turn into villains. So yeah, they don't really pose a threat to Sam and Bucky. So it just wasn't a really great villain plot. But overall, the rest of the show is just a fun, action-packed, just a dynamic duo show that I really, really enjoyed. Coming in at number 4 is Loki. Now, this was surprisingly my favorite of the Disney Plus MCU shows so far, and I just thought it was really great. Loki is an interesting, unique character, and his journey throughout the show is absolutely amazing. The new characters are awesome. Mobius is really cool, and I love the interactions that he has with Loki. This whole story was really interesting, and it was just fun to tune in every week and see what was happening. I love that they introduced a bunch of different variants of Loki. They were all a whole lot of fun. Old Loki and Gator Loki and Kid Loki, they're all so fun to see on the screen. It was just a really, really fun show. And it was one of those shows that didn't follow the same formula where the finale was just an absolute mess. And it was just a really, really fun show. And I just really enjoyed it. The time loops, the time warps, everything that was going on, and then the introduction of Kang was awesome. And there's just a whole lot of build up throughout the entire show. It's like, what's going on? We get to learn about the TVA, and everything about it was just really interesting. It's learning more about the multiverse, and I really enjoyed Loki. I thought it was a really, really fun show. Now, if you guys have been tuning in this long, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and let's kick it off with the top 3. Coming in at number 3 is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This movie is an absolute blast. Shang-Chi is a great introduction into the MCU, and I thought his character was absolutely amazing. He is so much fun, and he's a really likable character, and then Wenwu is such a menacing, awesome villain, and it was just so fun to see him and Shang-Chi's relationship and them fighting. Everything about it was just a whole lot of fun. There's some really great fight scenes throughout here. The fights with the Ten Rings are absolutely awesome. There's some really good comedy in Shang-Chi. Now, I think there should have been a little bit less, but there are some amazing jokes throughout the entire film. And I just thought it was a really, really fun MCU movie, and there's just a lot to love about Shang-Chi. Awkwafina's character is great as well, and I love her relationship with Shang-Chi. They just got such a great friendship, and I think they are a great duo inside the MCU. Another great thing about Shang-Chi is this thing. Like, I don't even know what it is, but it's the cutest thing I've ever seen. Yeah, it was in Shang-Chi, so that makes the movie even better. Anyway, Shang-Chi is just an awesome time. There's a lot of great action scenes in here. The characters are awesome, and it's just one of those great MCU films. Next up, our runner-up is Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, I was debating really, really hard if I wanted this to be number 1 or number 2. Now, Spider-Man No Way Home is a really, really special movie. It has a special place in my heart. It was one of the greatest theater experiences I've ever had in my entire life, and there's just so much to love about it. Toby and Andrew, their relationship with Tom Holland was just absolutely amazing. Them all working together as the 3 Spider-Man was just fantastic. Green Goblin is an absolute menacing, amazing villain. But the only thing that held it back from being number 1 was I think that they didn't really do a great job with the villain plot lines at near the end, where they just turned them all good, and there's just a lot of weird stuff with the villains going on at the end. And then they kind of wasted Venom a little bit, but overall the film is fantastic. It's a near perfect film. There's just so much to love about it. The comedy is amazing. It really develops Spider-Man's character in a really unique and interesting way. It's really emotional. emotional. There are so many moments that pay off. It is a fantastic movie, but it's not my number one. So coming in at number one is Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Yes, Wakanda Forever is my number one favorite movie inside of Phase 4. I just thought this film was absolutely perfect. It was a beautiful tribute to Chadwick Boseman, while also being an interesting and cohesive story that worked so well. Everything about this film was fantastic. They really developed Shuri's character in a really unique and interesting way. And Namor was a fantastic villain. He's definitely one of my favorite inside the MCU. He just did such a great job with his character, his backstory, and just it was just really interesting to see him on screen. I really loved his character. Ironheart was awesome. She was a great introduction into the MCU, and I thought she was a whole lot of fun. And just in general, the acting here, and there's just so much emotional weight to the film that makes it even more better. And absolutely love Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. They ended Phase 4 with a bang, and this is definitely one of my favorite MCU films. I really love Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. Tell me your guys' list down below. What is your favorite movie of Phase 4? What's your favorite TV show of Phase 4? And just give me your guys' ranking of Phase 4. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.